Dan Kohler, we actually checked his passport. He did go to Iceland, he learned something very interesting there, how to make Icelandic dark rye bread.
I did.
That you cook
In
ice.
No,
you
in the
bake
ground.
it in
No,
ice.
it puts it in the ground.
No,
Wait,
Mark.
I'm confused.
We put it in the ground.
You put it in the ground in Iceland.
In Iceland.
Which is a big glacier.
Basically.
Is it hot? Is the ground hot?
Well, the ground is hot because Iceland is over a hotspot of geothermal activity throughout the whole world. So first we should talk about what farming looks like in a country that's so close to the Arctic Circle, right?
Yeah.
So when you're doing farming up there, it's called subsistence farming, which means you're dealing with extreme conditions. So you have about 3 or 4 months to cook all of the food you need for the rest of the year.
No.
So these extreme conditions can be temperature and they can be light. So in Iceland right now it's summer, and their temperatures right now we're looking at the low 50s. That's what that's really what they're going to get.
Can they grow vegetables?
They can, because they harness the geothermal energy coming up through the ground in greenhouses.
Wow.
Now the other problem they have in the summer, so they've got 20 hours of daylight right now. The sun basically never sets. What they call night is from about 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. And right then, what you have is actually what we would call dusk. They're calling it night, but it never really gets fully dark. And then in the winter, it's the opposite. You have 20 hours of nighttime and maybe 4 hours of dusky, morning.
Yeah. When the sun sets, does it go quick because of the, or is it a long?
It's very long. It's a very long exposure.
Okay. All right, thank you. Speaking in your mom's terms.
Speaking in my mom's terms. And that's actually what took me to Iceland. I was there.
Oh my goodness,
there we go.
that is so beautiful.
I was traveling with
Oh
my
my
mother, who
Lord.
is a nature photographer, and so
That's a calendar picture.
Yeah, we hopped in a car and we
puzzle.
drove all over the country, kind of in search of amazing sites. And like I said, Iceland is really a center of geothermal activity. So we can see right there, that's a geyser. And actually the word geyser, it's geysir, it comes from Icelandic. It's a word that comes from their language so long ago because they have so many. So what is geothermal activity? Geothermal activity basically is heat that radiates from the molten core of the Earth all the way up to the surface. Wow. And how do we get that?
How do we get that?
How do we get that? So the Earth is made up of tectonic plates. We know that. So we know that from earthquakes out here in California. When they move, they can create a rift, they can break, they can go like this, and then lava can come up, right? That's where we have a volcano. So Iceland is built on a giant volcano. You might remember there was a volcanic eruption a couple years ago, and the airlines were...
Yeah, all the air travel was suspended or moved around. Yeah.
Right? So because of that, they have these steam vents around the whole country where there's a lot of heat coming up through the ground, and in those steam vents, they can actually cook their bread.
Well, let's take a look at them doing that.
Wait, we're going to dig a hole in the ground?
So I went there. I found a couple of bakers on some farms, and they showed me. They took me out, and we got some video of this. They took me out to their steam vent. We opened up the hole in the ground, and I think that's what we're going to cut into right now. We can see opening up the steam vent and looking at the bread for the first time.
Wow.
So this bread has been cooking underground for 24 hours.
As you can see, it's baked really in the underground with the natural energy. This is from yesterday, and it smells great.
Eva was telling me that because of the geothermal activity here, people even have their own gardens in the ground over here without a greenhouse, because the ground is actually warm enough to grow fruits and vegetables right in the ground.
That's amazing.
It's really an incredible country. Those extreme conditions have made a very vital people that have had to. They've had to deal with a lot of major conditioning.
Well, they adapt.
Right, they adapt. So let's make some of that bread.
Can we eat some while you're making it?
Please,
Yeah,
enjoy.
show us how to make it.
So you can do this at home. I've got some wheat flour.
You brought this back all the way from...
I brought this back from Iceland. I've got some rye flour, baking soda and baking powder, a little bit of salt.
It's very rich and
It is.
delicious.
So this is called Lyle's Golden Syrup. It's basically a cane syrup.
It's a cane syrup that you can get. What's that called?
The brand is called Lyle's. It's very popular all throughout the UK. And then I've got some buttermilk, and I'm just going to mix this together. So this is called kverebrúð, and kverebrúð is it's very easy to make, but it's also very specific to families. So every family would have a different recipe. They would make this a little differently. After you mix up the batter, you're going to pour it into a prepared pan, just some butter on the outside, and then...
Is there yeast involved in this at all?
There we go.
No one got excited. Yeah! Yeah!
Thank you.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
We're so intrigued.
Wow.
So this is not a rising bread.
Look at that.
Well, Each family does it a little differently. So the one that we just made has some baking powder and baking soda, but some families use yeast at home. So that's what I said. This is very specific to families around Iceland. And the reason we are eating it with some cured salmon is because the waters around Iceland are ripe with fish, especially, and in the rivers, the glacial rivers, they have something called Arctic char. And they preserve all this fish because, again, they've got to do a lot of their preserving in the summer months so that they have food for the rest of the year.
Wow.
So I'm sorry, this does or does not have yeast in it?
This one does not, specifically.
All right.
Now you brought back a little surprise from
I
Iceland?
did actually. So because they are in such extreme conditions, they have some interesting food traditions.
Uh-oh.
One being this bread that's been cooked in the ground, this steam vent baked bread. And then we've got some cod. This is fish jerky that they eat traditionally.
Fish jerky.
Fish jerky. So if you're a fan of beef jerky, you might like this. It's very high in protein.
It's very fishy.
Very fishy. It's very
it's dry.
fishy. It's
Like
dry,
very-
totally
like-
dry.
yeah.
It's like a chip.
Yeah.
It's crispy fish.
Oh.
Fish
So that-
in chips.
What an interesting.
There you go.
Fish as
How long
chips.
were you there with your mom?
I was traveling around the country for about 9 days. We were hiking. The thing is, Iceland is full of waterfalls. You know, there's a giant. Oh, there's the two of us. And this is a waterfall that we just found. The magical thing about Iceland, there's one road that circles the entire country. So we're driving, and you can just kind of pull over anywhere because it's kind of a magical wonderland. So we were driving, and my mom saw out of the corner of her eye this spill of water, and she said, let's go see what that is. So we got out of the car, we just parked, and we were hiking down, and all of a sudden we found ourselves in this ravine, and we were looking up, and we found this waterfall that was not on any of our maps, and you're looking down at water that's as blue as the Caribbean, but it's ice cold. It's coming it's fresh off the glacier.
Oh my gosh, this sounds
fantastic.
beautiful.
I'm going to scold you for not taking me next time.
All
you
right,
will.
fair.
Fantastic. More information, you can go to renegadekitchen.com. Visit Dan there, and I don't know, maybe we'll have a couple of pictures that your mom took. What a very talented photographer.
Thank you.
We're coming back. The topic is hoarding. It's up next, and it's with Matt Paxton.